Hey guys, it's Super Dad 2 and I'm here with M Apollo again. Today we're going to be reviewing the Golden Axe skeletons. This is them in the box, and as the table starts to rotate, we'll stop it when it gets to the back, and I'll do the quick bio that they have on them. It's a really small one in the back, not much to say though. So there you just see the guys kind of standing there. I mean, clearly this is supposed to be inspired by Jason and the Argonauts, that movie that was done by Ray Harryhausen. So we're gonna open these up, and then we're gonna try them out, and we're gonna maybe add a little surprise to it as we get going. Next up, we'll go ahead and have them open on the table.
Yeah, I think these golden axe skeletons actually look pretty cool. They look like the Harryhausen skeletons used in Jason and the Argonauts. I like their design. It's simplistic. Their swords and shields are simplistic. I probably would have liked to see some cooler designs on their shields because the skull is kind of redundant. But their pirate cutlasses are very awesome, and I like the expression they have on their face. And yeah, I'm excited to see how articulated they are.
Yeah, I wish they had kind of antiqued the shields a little bit so they weren't so plain, and maybe put some shading on the skeletons themselves. But overall, I think they do. They present very well. I mean, both front and back, as you can see. As we rotate the table, it comes closer. And when it comes closer, you can see some of the greater detail in the skeleton. Pretty cool, though, for something that I think you stated earlier, Mapalo, is pretty good as an army builder. So, what we're going to do now is talk about the articulation. These are pretty well articulated. So I'm going to go ahead and take his weapons out of his hands. Try not to let my big hands get in the way of everything. But essentially, he's pretty well articulated. We're going to start with his head. And his head moves up and down. And it moves down. There's a little tilt, not much, but he can tilt his head. The coolest thing about the head, and I'm going to bring him a little bit closer, is the articulated jaw. So you look at that articulated jaw, it's pretty cool. Coming down, of course, his head turns side to side. And like the other Storm collectibles, it's pretty good. It's pretty tight. It doesn't ratchet, but it's not like it's going to flop all over the place. Then when we look at his arms do move up. You just have to find the joint cut. If you find the joint cut, his arm will go all the way, and the swivel, it'll go all the way up. It'll come down. It extends out. Again, trying to keep my hands out of the way. His elbow bends all the way in. He can actually touch his rib cage. You can push it all the way back where he can touch his rib cage. So that's pretty good. Come down, of course, the body swivels well, and he's got a mid joint where his body can come back and it can go forward really nicely. Again, trying to keep my hands out of the way, but we're just looking at his torso. So again, he's got another joint at the bottom near his pelvis where he can swivel back and forth. Great articulation for skeleton. The joints don't come out. The body doesn't come apart, which is the problem with some of the other skeleton figures. So here, the same thing with his legs. If you have to find, though, of course, it'll kick straight up. But the nice thing is, at the joint cut, it comes all the way out. You can see that it comes all the way out. So I can stand him. And then we've got his knee articulation. His knee comes all the way back. Well, it doesn't come all the way back. He can't touch his butt, but he doesn't really have a butt to touch. So there's that. Then he's got good joint. He's got a little bit of rock back and forth. Not much, but there is some rock back and forth in it. And of course, his toes go all the way up and they come all the way down. And it's a solid figure. Of course, he's got swivel in his ankles. So it works out really well. And again, this, like the other Storm collectibles, is really cool because, and again, sorry about my hands in the way, guys, but you see, it doesn't take much for him to stand. He stands pretty well on his own. The problem that I have with them are his accessories. His accessories come with some pretty generic looking a shield, which it could have used a wash or, maybe a kind of an antiquing or something. And of course, his sword is a standard sword. Not bad, but it would have been nice maybe to have it a little blackened or darkened. But either way, he's a pretty good figure. Anything in Apollo?
Yeah, I mean, I think for what it is, for an army builder and a skeleton, it does its job, right? It's nothing really special. It doesn't have any special armor on it, just a sword and a normal looking shield. And I think that if that's what you're looking for in a figure, then yeah, this is definitely the right choice.
Eh, I agree. Like I said, even the skeleton himself, if he had had a little bit of a dark wash on him, and you'll see him in comparison for what's coming up next, we're going to compare him to some of the other figures. All right, here we go. So here we have these skeletons with some others that I really enjoy. It's just that, well, these are the BAF skeleton figures from the miniature series of Hellboy. They're super articulated, they're awesome figures, but they don't stand on their own very well. As a matter of fact, you'll see that the skeletons by Storm Collectible, or the skeleton I should say, is pretty much holding these guys up to keep them from falling over. They will stand on their own, but if you try anything like stop motion or try to pose them really well, they just don't stand up very long.
These are the Jason and the Argonauts Roval Tech skeletons, and as you can see, they're obviously smaller than our skeleton in the back. And what they lack in size, however, they definitely make up for in detail. As you can see, their coloration is a lot more realistic. It's less pale and less washed out. And most importantly, in my opinion, their gear is very detailed, like the colors on their swords and shields and the different icons that you see. And from what I can tell, it looks like they stand pretty well, even when taken in rotation. However, of course, the other one does have the size on these guys, so if you guys have some like 6, 7 inch figures, they probably go well with the other skeleton.
So, talking about size, I should have mentioned before that the Storm Collectible skeleton measures just above 7 inches, while clearly these smaller Rovoltech, even though they have a much better wash and they have detailed gear as far as the shields and everything go, they stand about 5 inches. So these will go, and you'll see, we'll pose these with some of the other figures so you can kind of see them. But even though Michael Paulo says they do stand very well once you get them to stand, it's kind of hard to get them to stand. Where the Storm Collectible, they stand perfectly fine in several different types of poses very well.
So here we have the Storm Collectible skeleton, obviously outmatched by the Mythic Legion skeletons. In my opinion, both in armor and in just general looks. The three skeletons definitely look like they're way more ready for battle. Their armor is much more detailed. They're about the same size too. I know I'm kind of trashing on the Storm Collectibles one, but I just really like the way the Mythic Legions ones look. Especially the bone coloration makes it really look like actual bone.
No doubt, Emma Paulo. You know, I will say, and I've said it before, I know it's supposed to be a bonus to have the interchangeability in the Mythic Legion line, but sometimes those arms just don't stay in the socket or the waist doesn't stay on. And here I've got to give it to the Storm Collectible. He is actually more posable and he stands better than the Mythic Legions figure. But there's no denying what Emma Paulo said. In looks, wash, weapons, armor, overall appearance, the Mythic Legion line just takes the cake. I mean, it's just amazing looking. And I'll always continue to get pretty much everything that comes out from the Four Horsemen in the way of Mythic Legions. But that's about it. I think we're pretty much done with this particular review. We talked about just about everything there is to talk about with them, though we ended up getting two sets. So we've got now four of these guys. I may actually go ahead and, maybe put a wash on them on some blood on them, the way you saw with the BAF for the Hellboy line, and just darken them up a little bit so they match a little bit. But there it is. That's the review of the Storm Collectibles skeletons. Anything you want to add, Emma Paulo?
Not really. I mean, just yeah, I think that the Storm Collectible in articulation and standing does really well. In looks, doesn't do so well. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it for this review. Thanks so much. Let us know what you think in the comments.
All right,
Talk to
see
you
you
soon.
guys.